Good evening, I'm Jeremy Small, and on this episode of 59 Minutes, we're going to discuss the extreme controversy surrounding the 2016 Olympics, and specifically the shot put event. In this event, a traditionally Russian-dominated event, we had three non-Russian winners of the gold, silver, and bronze. We had Ryan Krauser from the United States winning the gold, Joe Kovacs from the U.S. taking home the silver, and Thomas Walsh from New Zealand taking home the bronze medal. Now, in years past, you'll see that the Russians have dominated this event. Now, I'm joined with Majdi and Carter representing Russia, and Ashley and Nikki representing the U.S. I'll begin with you from Russia. What is your take on this controversial ending?
Well, obviously it's a very sad situation because we really do have some of the strongest competitors when it comes to shot put in our country, but due to American-led Western efforts to exclude them from this competition based on conspiracy and unfounded allegations, they were all disqualified from the competition, and we think that that really does not fall within the principles of sportsmanship.
Right, folks, for those of you at home that do not know, there were 5 Russian shot put competitors trying out for these Olympic Games. 3 of them were found to test positive with dope, but in a strange turn of events, all 5 were surprisingly disqualified from competition. An event that we see was led by the United States and the Western world in their vain attempt to lead and finally win the shot put event. For the United States, why? Why did you feel the need to finally win the shot put, and why did you go about it in this strange way?
First of all, I would have to comment on your use of the word vain. It is not vain. Our athletes competed and clearly came out on top.
Yes, but in a case where the better athletes were not allowed to compete.
Said we did not.
But we were.
But it was clear to be unfair for our athletes.
But
Yes, but you could only win
unfair.
when the world champion Russians were not competing.
But all athletes are held to the same standard. All were drug tested. It's not our fault that the U.S. weren't tested positive.
Westernized ideal.
No, it's not.
It's
it was
not.
fair.
It's very ironic,
No.
though, that they
They
get to
won.
come out on top and clean.
Exactly.
I must agree that in
staring
a case
down at us from their hill.
where they led the charge to have these Russians tested,
I mean,
that
now-
somehow now they're taking home the
Because
gold
we
and
have
silver
Now
medal.
you're
integrity.
sitting
You
here,
want
you're
all
listening to
athletes.
them. Now you're sitting here, you're listening to them. They're telling you, "Oh, it's not our fault." Who did this? You guys did this. You guys made us look bad. You guys disqualify our guys.
No, we did nothing. If you
Please,
listen
let them
enough,
finish.
We definitely have a great athletes. For years, we've been having great athletes, especially in this kind of sport.
and that's an
Germans,
opinion.
please.
Now,
It's not an opinion at all when you look at 2012. The gold and silver were won by our
Exactly.
and in 2008, and for essentially decades before, this is a Russian-dominated event, and the only way the U.S. has ever come close is when some of the Russians have not competed, like in
Exactly.
1994, when they were able to snag silver. But in this case, they're all not competing. And
The
you
only
win.
way, essentially, the only way the Americans were able to compete and bolster their egos was by making sure that the field was not fairly competitive.
Take off the Russians.
Take out the top dog in a way that
and play it and win it.
in,
Right.
That's
shady
unfair.
backroom deals.
Right. Now, moving on to our second question here.
Are
Do you-
we going to have a chance to speak?
Are you going to address that?
You've already
You already
answered your
answered
question.
question.
Your
You
time-
said
you've
you
had
don't
your
have
opportunity.
time.
We're going to move on to the second question now. Now, for Majdi and Carter, now, do you think that these strange turn of events in the attempt to get rid of the Russian competitors has anything to do with the current situation between the Russians and the United States politically?
Absolutely.
Of course, yeah.
We really think that this was mainly driven by anti-Russian sentiment that is so prevalent in the West and in America, mainly in their opposition to what they think are misguided foreign policy decisions of our nation. And we really think it's such a shame to be bringing politics into sport like that.
Right. The Olympics
is
are
not-
known to be like the great bring together of the world.
Exactly.
Exactly,
This
but
is an
this is-
opportunity for nations across the world to come together and compete in a sportsmanlike conduct, and that's not good enough for the United States.
Now,
Can I say something?
yes, very quickly.
Okay, first of all, he's saying that this is Western, that it's American. Can we acknowledge the fact that the Olympics weren't even in the United States? that they were in
They were
Rio.
held in Rio.
No, that's
you
not,
could
that
just
has
have
nothing to
them
do
in
with it.
Rio.
It was,
How
it was
could
the
we have
American.
it?
I do
It was the American
You did the
committee.
rules.
It was
Right.
the American committee
The
that was
location of the
leading the
Olympics has
drive
nothing to do with
to
it.
have
It
the
does
shot
not-
putting
it doesn't
It
matter.
wasn't an
It
American
does
committee.
not-
It was an international committee.
yeah.
The
It does
American
not
committee
matter.
was driving to have the International Shot Put Association ban our players due to allegations of widespread doping.
And
But it was true. They tested positive.
We-
going back to his question. The United States and all the Western countries for decades, not new thing. They've been trying to, kind of affect Russia, affect us economically, politically, and now they're bringing it into the sports.
Please
too.
do not try to blame America
No,
for all of your
man,
problems.
I'm not blaming America for anything, but this is the truth. There's people out there that need to know the truth.
All right. Well, audience, I think you've certainly gained a good insight in this opinion. We've seen clearly that the Russians were stripped of their potential glory by the allegation to the United States that these were doping athletes. But I'll let you decide. You be the judge. For 59 minutes, I'm Jeremy Small. Have a good night. Good evening. I'm Jeremy Small, and on this episode of 59 Minutes, we'll be talking about the controversial finish to the 2016 shot put in the Olympics. Now, from the United States representatives, we have Ashley and Nikki, and from Russia, we have Carter and Helena. Now, the shot put is traditionally a Russian-dominated event, but this year, there are no Russians in the top three. So, my first question for you, from the delegates from Russia, is what is your perspective on the outcome of the shot put event in the 2016 Olympics?
Well, obviously, Jeremy, it's very disappointing for us as a nation because we feel that we had a fair chance to compete. We had some of the top athletes in the world, but due to controversy and conspiracy, we were not allowed to participate in the events.
Now, for those of you at home not knowing about this controversy, the Russian athletes were caught doping by the International Olympic Committee and were not allowed to compete. Now, I'll allow the U.S. to partake in this. What is your stance on the outcome of these shot put games?
I can go first, Ashley. I would just like to say that I think the numbers say it all. That the U.S. deserves to have won. It is very unfortunate that your athletes were involved in a controversy, but that's why, as an athlete, you have to live above reproach. People are always looking at you, and you have to live at a higher standard. And maybe the Russians didn't do that. So I think that the numbers say it all. That the U.S. they were living well. They weren't in controversy, and they showed up and they did well.
I just want to second that. It was there for a reason. They couldn't compete for a reason. It was unsportsmanlike conduct. There's rules, and they didn't follow them. So I believe the U.S. Had a fair shot. Russia had a fair shot. They just went around the guidelines.
Anything else to say?
That position doesn't really seem fair to me when you consider past athletes who were competing on behalf of the United States and were later found to be involved in doping scandals, or even previously found to be involved in doping scandals, but were allowed to compete or weren't punished to the level that Russian athletes were.
Right.
It seemed that we were treated much more heavy-handedly.
Right, there is the case of Joe Smith in the 2008 shot put Olympics that was caught doping, and he was allowed to compete and ended up winning the silver medal. So how does that work for the United States? Is there bias to the Western world on the part of the International Olympic Committee favoring U.S. athletes, maybe, who have been caught and they just sweep it under the rug as opposed to the Russian athletes this year?
Well, I would say that there's no bias to the Western world because the athlete from 2008, he got his medal stripped from him, and rightly so, because he was involved in a scandal. And I also believe that maybe they hadn't found that he was doping or whatever he was involved in prior to him competing, so he was allowed to. And I talked to the International Committee, and all athletes are held at the same standard. They are all given drug tests. And if they pass, then they pass, and so they're allowed to compete. So I guess the Russians just didn't pass the drug test at the right time.
Now, Hannah, for you, could this be a potential problem in the timing of the drug testing? Maybe for the Russians, they're specifically targeted before rolling out to the qualifying shot put event, while as in the case of Joe Smith in 2008, we saw he wasn't drug tested until after to find out that the drugs were in his system during the Olympics. What do you have to say about that?
Sorry. I don't know. I don't know.
It's hard to determine because we can't even make a fair assessment because we were treated so unfairly. We can't even say what the outcome would have been because we don't know, because we weren't given the same chance. Our athletes were all disallowed by the International Shot Put Association because of a few cases, and we had clean athletes who weren't allowed to participate due to pressure from the U.S. shot put.
Why do you say that? Why do you say you had clean athletes that weren't allowed to participate?
Because they were clean, but the organization, the International Shot Put Organization's decision to ban all Russian athletes and prevent them from participating due to conspiracies saying that there was a widespread and even administrative decision to pursue doping, disqualified all of our shot put competitors from the international competition.
Okay, so they were doping. They were found doping. So
A handful of them were found to be doping, and they should not have been allowed to compete. I think that's fair.
Right.
But there were some who were not, and they were still banned because of an alleged administrative decision to allow doping on our behalf, and we just don't think that's fair.
Folks, for those of you at home that do not know, 3 of the 5 Russian shot put competitors were found to be doping, and all 5, including the 2 that were not found to have dope in their system, were disqualified from competition. Well, folks, I think we're wrapping up our time here. You have the evidence, audience. You decide. Do what you will. For 59 minutes, I'm Jeremy Small, signing off.